Now then, so he built the barrier. And when he did it, Gog and Magog could neither penetrate nor could they scale. So can they be jinn? No. Why? The jinn could pass through the wall. So now Gog and Magog will have to be human beings, because there are only three categories of creation. You have the angels, you have the jinn, and you have human beings. Once you put on your thinking cap, look at how easy it is to understand the Quran. So you're not going to be expecting Gog and Magog to be living in the interior of the earth, and they have 4 pairs of ears and 6 pairs of head and all this kind of nonsense. Huh? Would you allow a fabricated hadith to take you on a ride? Or would you go to the Quran to learn the study the subject? So Gog and Magog have to be human beings. Why? Because they commit fasad. Is there anyone who differs with me? I know there are those who differ with me, but they're too scared to say so. So they'll remain silent. And when they go back home, then they'll blast me on the internet. But this audience today, I don't think you have such people with such low character. Gog and Magog are human beings. But they're human beings who commit fasad. And Allah has reserved for fasad the greatest punishment of all. There are different gradations of punishment, but the highest level is cut off the hand and the feet from opposite sides and crucify them. That's the punishment in the Quran for fasad. And Gog and Magog commit fasad, meaning they corrupt everything they touch. And the corruption is such, it's so dangerous that it threatens to destroy. They corrupt the political system, they corrupt the economy, they corrupt the market, they corrupt the monetary system, they corrupt the educational system, they corrupt the system of time, they corrupt the relationship between men and women, they corrupt a woman's role in society and a woman's role in a marriage, they corrupt it. And the corruption is such that it threatens to destroy. So society will collapse, will disintegrate when they are released. So this is the first qarn, قەڕنەین, an event which will occur twice in history. So when will Allah bring down the barrier? And when will Gog and Magog be released into the world? The Prophet ﷺ told us it's a hadith al-Qudsi, meaning the direct speech of Allah, but not in the Quran. He said that Allah said about Gog and Magog, I have created creatures of mine so powerful that none but I can destroy them. So now we can understand. When the people said to Zulkarnain, please build this barrier to save us from Gog and Magog, Zulkarnain should have said, what nonsense, I don't need to build any barrier, I'll go there and punish them. And when I'm finished with them, they wouldn't even raise their little finger again. But he didn't do that. Because even though Allah had given him power to do whatever he wanted to, his power was not enough to punish and destroy Gog and Magog. The only thing that he could do was to contain them. And I like to use in the language of chess, we call it to checkmate them. so they become harmless. And that's what's building the barrier. But when they are released from the world, what's going to happen? We leave Surah Al-Kahf and we go to the only other reference in the Quran, only two. The second one is Surah Al-Anbiya. And in Surah Al-Anbiya, Allah speaks about a town. And He destroyed the town. He expelled the people of the town. And then He placed a ban on them that they could never return to this town to reclaim it as their own until Gog and Magog are released and they spread out all over the world. So now, put on your thinking caps. There is an event to occur in human history, and it will occur only once. Only once. That a people who have indestructible power, but whose power is godless, it rests on foundations which are godless, and who use power to corrupt and to destroy. These people will appear on the stage of the world, and they will spread out all over the world. And when they do that, they will control power in the world. And they will then bring these people back to that town from which Allah had expelled them. This will occur only once in history. It will be such a momentous event in history that if you can't see it, you're blind like a bat. You're really blind. You should send your mind to the laundry. Yes, if you can't see it when it happens. Let me repeat what's going to happen. When Allah brings down the barrier, then eventually a people will emerge on the stage of the world who will have indestructible power. No one can punish them. No one can destroy them. No one can fight them. And with this indestructible power, they will spread out all over the world and take control of power in the world. But they will use their power to corrupt, to commit fasad, to corrupt and destroy. And when they are spread out all over the world, they will then bring these people back to that town from which they had been expelled by Allah. Good? I wrote Jerusalem in the Quran 22 years ago. The book is at the back there. 22 years have passed since I identified the town as Jerusalem. And there's evidence to support me. Because our Prophet said, Allah's blessing be upon him, that Gog and Magog will be destroyed in Jerusalem. Allah will attack them as a biological warfare, attack them with something at the top of the spine. And they'll all fall down paralyzed, and by next morning they're all dead. Jerusalem. So I identified the town as Jerusalem. So who are those who had so much power, who used power to oppress and to corrupt, who spread out all over the world and took control of power in the world, and then brought the Jews back to Jerusalem to reclaim it as their own? Who did it? Answer: modern Western civilization. That's right. And I've been teaching this for 20-something years. And this is the truth. This is correct. Guess how many of your scholars of Islam agree with me? I can keep on teaching for another 20 years. It makes no difference. Yes. They will not at all accept for me that this is the explanation of Gog and Magog. On the contrary, they say, no, Gog and Magog will only be released. The barrier will only be brought down. And Gog and Magog will only be released when Jesus returns, Nabi Isa alayhi salam, and he kills Dajjal. Only then will Gog and Magog be released. Okay, if the barrier is still standing, let's go and find it. Huh? If the barrier is still standing, let's go and find it. That's the Black Sea there. This is the Caspian Sea here. This is the Caucasus Mountains. And you have something called Google Earth. Every square inch of the earth has been filmed. And you can sit down with your laptop and you can check it out. Where is the barrier? No, they don't want to hear anything I have to say. I'm using this this hearing aid for the first time, so excuse me. I have to learn to use it. And so now, we have identified from Surah Al-Anbiya that Gog and Magog are the ones who will bring the Jews back to Jerusalem to reclaim it as their own. They've already done that. And therefore Gog and Magog are those who control power in modern Western civilization. They are people who use power on the foundations which are godless. They say they are Christians, but now you can see all their churches and cathedrals are being sold. I have a question to ask. This is the house of God. Is it only a masjid that can be a house of God? I have a question to ask this gathering today. Is it only a masjid which can be recognized as the house of God? Answer me.
No.
Huh?
No.
Go in the Quran and see what Allah says in the Quran. In Surah Al-Hajj, Allah never says that the masjid is the only house of God. In the Quran, Allah makes mention of the church, the cathedral, the synagogue, and the masjid. So can you buy and sell a house of God? Why is my audience so quiet? Huh? Can a house of God be bought and sold?
No.
Could you ever sell a masjid?
No.
Well, if you cannot sell a masjid, can the Jews sell a synagogue, or would it be sinful for them to do that? Huh? Sinful, yes. And if the Christian is selling his cathedral and his church, would that not also qualify as sinful?
Yes.
Yes. And when people are doing acts which are sinful, how do we respond? The Prophet said, "Man ra'a munkaran falyughayyirhu biyadihi." Whosoever sees something that is sinful, change it with your hand. He didn't say go and buy the church. He said change it with your hand. Stop them from selling the church. Stop them from selling the synagogue. Change it with your hand. وَإِن لَمْ تَفْعَلْ and if you cannot change it with your hand, then change it with your tongue. فَيُغَيِّرْهُ بِلِسَانٍ. And if you cannot change it, you're talking and they wouldn't listen to you, they're still selling. فَبِقَلْبِهِ. Then detest it with your heart. But that is the lowest stage of faith. So what do we say about a people who abandon? Number one, change it with your hand. Number two, change it with your tongue. Number three, change it with your heart. And they collect the money and they go and buy the church. And they declare it's a masjid. Do you know any scholar of Islam in Britain who has condemned this? Is there anyone? You don't know anyone? None. And yet, this is shameful and disgraceful to sell and to buy the house of God. You will not do it for a masjid, but you will allow them to do it with a church and a cathedral. And you go and buy it and then transform it into a masjid. This is the state of intellectual poverty, disgraceful state of intellectual poverty of the Ummah here in Britain and in other parts of the world as well. And so now, we have identified Gog and Magog. And there are people who have power, but their power rests on foundations which are godless. And they use power to oppress. And they control power in modern Western civilization.